Now, with me reacting to the big stories of the day and taking a view on my big opinion monologue is my all-star panel. I'm delighted to welcome journalist and broadcaster Ingrid Tarrant, commentator and co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albie Amankona, and journalist and contributor to Young Voices UK, Georgia Gilholy. Great to have all three of you with me. Georgia, what do you think about schools going plant-based?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that this particular head teacher chose to do this herself. We don't really know necessarily what the other teachers think. We can see that a lot of the parents weren't happy about it. It's probably why they went to the Daily Mail. I think it's interesting as well that she seems to justify it through the environmental argument. And, you know, as you were talking about previously, some of the crops and ingredients that are required for a lot of these vegetarian substitute products, which it seems that the school are using in these dinners, because obviously you can have vegetarian diet. You know, people have been doing it in certain cultures for thousands of years without, you know, corn sausages. They do require products like soy to produce on a mass scale that is actually incredibly environmentally damaging. And it's certainly in many areas a lot more worse for the environment than sustainable forms of agriculture. So I think that these kind of things need to be thought about sensibly and in moderation rather than just, oh, you know, we all need to, you know, force these children to be vegetarian for the sake of the environment. I think it's obviously not as straightforward as that. And I don't think it's this head teacher's business to impose it because it's her belief.
Albie, to defend the head teacher, there is a clear link between animal agriculture and climate change. So is she onto something with this?
There is a link between animal agriculture and climate change, and I'm by no means anti-vegan or anti-vegetarian, but I am pro-choice, and I think that children and their parents should be free to choose what their children eat. And I think what I find uncomfortable about this story is that it was just imposed on them. There was no consultation with the parents. I imagine if there was consultation with the parents, it probably wouldn't have gone in the head teacher's favour. And I think that people have just got to choose what they want to eat and not feel like they're being dictated to when they're just trying to enjoy something nice to eat for lunch. And also another thing which is really important is when you think about children on free school meals, you know, it might be the one warm meal that they get. It might be the one meal that has decent protein in it because fish and meat is expensive. So if you take that fish protein and the meat protein away from these children on free school meals, maybe they're not getting it at home. So I think there's a lot more that needs to be thought about before something like this is rolled out in a school.
Ingrid, it's very clear that vegetables are excellent for your health, but these processed fake meats are another story.
Well, that's exactly it. So, you know, we're talking about a vegetarian diet, but it's not vegetarian, is it? It's substitute meat. What's the point then? So the flavour of the meat they're liking, so you're kind of crossing over. I think that's completely wrong. Just do vegetable then only, but you do have to have the supplements. It's absolutely right. You have to have the B vitamins because you get the iron deficiencies. You have to get your omega oils, loads of things. Actually, with the iron deficiency anemia, there's fatigue, dizziness, headaches, concentration problems and pale skin. And I know this from somebody I know that decided to go vegetarian quite early on. She was probably about 14 at the time, and she really started to look quite ill. She was paler than her siblings and not as healthy. I think it's very frightening as well. Later on, yes, of course, make that decision, but don't go for processed food because it's just full of rubbish. And look at it, you've got the fattening things there as well, the wheats and the soyas and things like that, and your colourings. It's all
and the vegetable oil, of course.
Vegetable oil.
We'll be hearing later, Ingrid, from Dr. Ken Berry about these vegetable oils, which he argues are extremely bad for your health.
Yeah, well, I can completely understand. You know also that vegetarians emit, I think it's 60% more methane gas than meat eaters. So that's very unpleasant as well.
Too right. Which of the three of you would be willing to try one of these vegetarian sausages?
I'll try.
I love veggie sausages. I actually prefer them to ordinary sausages.
That's amazing. Well, in that case, I'm going to ask my brilliant floor manager, Sasha, to come in and actually distribute these sausages. So,
what
Sasha,
brand
when you
are
have
they,
a second,
though, Mark?
Liam, send
because
Sasha in, and we're going to do...
It needs to be the right brand.
A live taste
because there are
some
horrible ones.
I'm a very multi-talented individual. I cook these myself in the GB News microphone. So the brilliant Sasha is now going to distribute these. They've been
Mark
cooked
gets
at
worse.
the right temperature for, I think, 3.5 minutes. I mean,
Ping.
Nigella Lawson, eat your heart out. So I'm going to ask Sasha to pass those to your good selves. And whilst I do, Albie, it's obviously a big debate, isn't it, about what we feed our kids. The issue is we're in the grip of a childhood obesity epidemic, and I'm not sure taking fish fingers and burgers and steaks away from kids is going to help.
I'm good, thanks.
Well, if you're talking about childhood obesity, you just mentioned burgers there, which obviously aren't very healthy for children. I think, look, we've just got to really teach children to eat a balanced diet, and that might include some vegetarian sausages, it might include some ordinary bangers, it might include some fish, it might include some fish fingers, it might include, you know, their 5-a-day vegetables. There's just got to be a balanced diet. I'm not one of these people that's just anti-vegan and anti-vegetarian. I grew up with one of my very close friends was a vegetarian from youth, and she's not unwell. She's just as healthy as all of us. You've just got to eat a balanced diet. You know, in countries like India, they've got a mainly plant-based diet. They're not all unhealthy. Arguably, a lot of them are healthier than us because of their food. So we've just got to be teaching balanced diets.
Yeah, and I think you're so right, Albie. It is all about balance. And that's why I'm not saying that kids have got to eat 3 steaks a day, but I'd like just that they had a mix at school. And the point is that actually, in terms of nutrition, very often, Georgia, the best and highest quality meal a child will get is at school. And that's why the school meal has got to be right.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many children, you know, in this country that are in high levels of relative poverty. And as Albie was saying earlier, you know, for some of these children, the reality is this is the best meal they're going to get for the whole day, you know, for 5 days of the week. And also it's, you know, during the time they're at school, it's going to help them with their learning. You know, kids find it hard to concentrate as it is. I know I do, and I'm 23 years old. So you definitely need to be eating, you know, as good a diet as possible. I think for the vast majority of children and people, I think, you know, meat's required. And I think for adults or teenagers or whoever who do make the decision to be vegetarian, they need to be sort of sensible with that and not just, I don't know, eating pasta, which some people do.
Georgia was very wise and passed on the offer of one of my vegan sausages, but I saw you having a nibble, Ingrid. What's your verdict on the sausages?
Can I do what you did?
Yeah. Oh dear. Okay, Albie, what do you think?
Not nice.
Albie looks quite happy. He's got a mouthful.
like it?
He's really gone for it.
Yeah, but look, he's swallowing it down with fluid.
Wash down with a cup
It's a bit dry.
A little bit
I
dry.
need a bit of ketchup with this, I think.
I don't eat normal sausages, so I wouldn't even be able to tell you the difference, to be honest. But they do not look appetising.
Albie, if you'd known, would you have known that was vegan?
Those actually weren't very nice, Mark.
Dear.
These aren't the sausages that I buy, no, definitely not.
No, I'm sure yours come from Harrods.
Look at the colour of them.
The Selfridges food hall. They're a funny colour as well, I've got to say.
Horrible colour. This is unnatural. This isn't...
That just looks like the ordinary colour of a cheap banger, doesn't it?
No, do you know what it looks like?
Maybe it's not cooked.
It looks like a yum-yum.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, with sugar on top. Look.
Yeah.
It does, yeah,
I know
I
what they
can
look
see
like.
that.
Yeah, yellow yum, lemon yum-yum.
There you go. Well, welcome to Cookery Corner on Mark Dolan tonight. What from you? It's time now to react to the big news stories of the day with my wonderful panel, journalist and broadcaster Ingrid Tarrant, commentator and co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albie Amankona, and another good friend of the show, political journalist Georgia Gilholy. After 2 years of liberty-affronting COVID restrictions, 3 pointless and damaging lockdowns, just in my opinion, mask mandates, muzzling the nation, and the general doom and gloom, well, the end of restrictions is finally in. Boris is expected to publish the government's Living with COVID strategy on the 24th of February as he scraps almost all restrictions, including the legal requirement to self-isolate. But are we unlocking too soon? Will Hutton asks that very question in The Observer today. He writes, this short-sighted mad dash exit from the pandemic mirrors its beginning, a painful refusal to accept that human beings benefit from the group acting together, especially in matters of public health. Well, is Will Hutton right? Has this decision to unlock been made too quickly? What do you think, Georgia?
I think it's been made far too slowly. I think that you can see during the initial sort of madness really of the early pandemic, not really knowing what was going to happen, not really knowing how dangerous the virus was, why some of these decisions were made. But it is quite interesting how immediately the Western world and the rest of the world sort of jumped on the bandwagon of China's approach of locking down people, making people stay in their homes. It's absolutely unprecedented, to sort of force healthy people to do that within recent history or history in general.
Yeah.
So I think, really it's scandalous that it took so long to do this.
Albie, do you think Boris has got the timing right, or is Will Hutton right that we may pay the price for this?
I actually think the Prime Minister's got the timing exactly right, actually. We had the really successful booster rollout over Christmas. Everyone got their offer to get their jab. I think it was before the new year, which is fantastic. We're seeing levels of hospitalisations really low, deaths are really low. And so I think it's probably the right time to open up. And actually, in this article in The Observer, one of the things that I really don't like is this attack on Tory libertarians, like that's some sort of slur.
Yeah.
It's because of the good men and women of the COVID recovery group that we didn't go into lockdown over Christmas, because they made it politically difficult for Boris to implement that kind of thing. I fully believe, had they not done that rebellion, we would have been in lockdown over Christmas. So it's not a slur to be a Tory libertarian.
No, briefly, Ingrid, why is freedom a four-letter word?
That is a big, good question. You're asking the wrong person really here, just generally about this question, because I was completely against any form of lockdown from the beginning. So in my mind, this could not have come soon enough. But, why is free...
But some people don't want this to end, do they?
No, they don't. But, I do wonder if it's become the comfort blanket. People have got used to it. I'm all for herd immunity, but we've got herd mentality instead.
Wow,
as a
what a
result
great
of this.
description. Yeah, that's a zinger of a line, and I can't disagree. But what is your view, Mark, is all about? Let's crack on now, reacting to the big stories of the day with my brilliant panel of broadcaster Ingrid Tarrant, commentator and co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albie Amankona, and journalist and contributor to Young Voices UK, Georgia Gilholy. China's calamitous Olympic Games took another bizarre turn for the worst today, as events were delayed because of an outbreak of real snow. Among the many criticisms of these games has been the reliance on 100% fake snow, as the region typically receives less annual snowfall than London. But a rare Beijing blizzard meant several ski events were postponed, while most training runs were cancelled because the courses were deemed unsafe. China's hosting of the Games has been widely criticised due to the country's checkered human rights record, including the persecution of the Uyghur Muslim community, the crushing of freedom in Hong Kong, and let's not forget their lack of transparency in finding the source of COVID-19. Athletes have also made a litany of complaints about the inhumane hotel quarantine conditions, the lack of hot food, and perilously cold mountain temperatures. Plus, their doping system has been called into question after 15-year-old Russian figure skater Kamila Valieva tested positive for a banned substance. So what do we think about this? The Games are shrouded in controversy. Do you think, actually, in any sense, Georgia, that our athletes should be there?
I totally understand why individual athletes who, of course, spend their lives, training for these kind of events, wish to participate. However, I find myself seeing very stark parallels between the Olympic Games in 1936 in Berlin. I think the Chinese human rights record, the Chinese government's, that is absolutely aberrant. They're not just committing corruption like many other nations do, they're committing a genocide against the Uyghur Muslims and other Turkic minorities. These are thousands upon thousands of people who are trapped in camps, having their organs forcibly harvested, being forcibly sterilised. This is not a country that should be allowed a platform like the Winter Games to project this fantasy of what they are. The thing is, everyone knows that it's not true, but within the country, people face censorship. They can't even buy tickets to the games. You hear about foreign journalists. I believe it was a journalist for The Times who's reporting from the Winter Games. He's had to have his phone taken off him because he knows it's going to be hacked, for example, if he takes it with him to China. This is not a situation that should be happening. I think the problem is that the IOC, who organised the Olympics, they obviously just needed it to be somewhere because of COVID. A lot of places were pulling out of this Games. It wasn't a Games that sort of people were fighting over. So I think that's why it ended up being in Beijing this time. And you can see, for example, I'm not expert on snow sports, but you can see this is not the appropriate location, even if it did have, a stellar human rights record. to be having these kind of games. It just looks a bit ridiculous, to be honest.
And aren't we, Ingrid, legitimising this regime by sending our athletes?
It's terrible. The sad thing is, you know, in sport, it should be apolitical. But, you know, it's gone on and on, like Berlin, Montreal, New Zealand, all those places. It's become so politicised, and it's such a shame because, yes, for these athletes and the skiers that have just trained, they've put their heart and soul into it. They've invested so much of their time to come back, you know, proudly with their medals. And then this awful, you know, we have to accept, I suppose, that sports now is going to be, it's like the Eurovision Song Contest, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so completely political. But this is so wrong. It's just flying in the face of everything that I am against, and we're all against. We're all agreed with that. And especially with the COVID. I mean, it's ironic that it's them hosting it. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's a sick joke, really, isn't
really.
it? It's a real sting in the tail
Yeah.
that we've got to attend this event, bring our dignitaries, and
Well,
this
we're
is
not,
the
are we?
epicentre.
But we
No,
didn't.
the dignitaries didn't come. You're quite right.
Yeah,
I stand
so
corrected.
they boycotted it in that way. There's quite a few. There's America, us, Australia, Latvia, Finland, quite a few.
But how did we end up with a Winter Olympics in a place where it doesn't snow?
Anyway.
I mean, I agree with everything that you've just said,
that
but that's
logistically
just like,
I think
what?
Norway withdrew.
It's just bizarre.
I believe it was Norway that withdrew.
Or
Because I think they were one of the only places that were competing for this specific thing when it came to the end of it. But I totally agree with you. I mean,
It's just the Winter Olympics should happen somewhere where there's snow. It shouldn't rely on 100% fake snow.
Like
And the funny
an
part-
international football tournament in Doha.
Exactly, where it's too
example.
hot to play for most of the day. And of course, they've also got an awful human rights record there as well.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think the answer is? In the end, we don't want the athletes to suffer. They've trained for years for this moment. And I think it would be a shame to use them as political pawns.
Yes.
But there has to be some comeuppance for the Chinese regime, doesn't it, in the long term, notwithstanding the Winter Olympics. How do we send a message to China that how they've behaved in the last 2 years is not acceptable?
I think that is a really big and difficult question, Mark, because China is a very influential and powerful country. It's got a lot of strategic industries that the rest of the world is reliant on. We've got all of these value chains for semiconductors, for example, which are all tied up with China. So we can't really disentangle China from the global economy, because if we put, you know, trade sanctions on China, prices here will go up.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult. I honestly don't know the answer to the question. It's
Other than
difficult to-
perhaps the West uniting against China, that we must come together.
But honestly, I don't know if that would have any meaningful impact on China, would it? We've all condemned them for the Uyghur Muslims, for example. That's not changed, has it?
No.
This is a country of 1 billion people. They have a completely different political system to us. They don't care about liberty. They don't care about democracy.
But they
They're
care
doing
about
their own
economy.
thing.
But they do care very much about economy. That's it. I mean, in a way, I mean, a lot of people were saying that this COVID thing was absolutely perfect because they just came out of it 2 weeks later while the rest of the world went into lockdown. Their factories were open, so everybody depended on them, or PPE equipment
Absolutely.
and stuff like that. So economy, yes, and I think that you're right. I think if the rest of the world, I mean, put that in context with the rest of the world, you know, if we stop buying from China, everything we buy comes from China. We've got to stop doing that. OK, prices will go up, I agree. But actually, mass production will bring the prices down if it's not in China. I do think we should do that. I mean, I feel really strongly about that. We've got still, it's cheap stuff that they're using as well. Cheap stuff. I'm doing an upholstery course, and you have all these.
Really?
I know. Look, I'm in a terrible state. I am really.
You look great.
No, well, no, my hands don't. But the needles and things.
I thought
they
you were a
use to-
bare knuckle fighter or something.
Yeah, I know, it looks like that. They snap. They're made in China because it's cheap steel. It's not quality. We've got steel. We've got the industries. We can get them going again, get them moving. I agree with you. Whole of the world unite. We start manufacturing, and then off they go. That's all they're worried about.
What do you
economy.
think, Georgia? Do you think China can be punished? Do we have any
It
leverage
depends what you mean by
against them?
punishment. I think we should certainly be looking to decouple ourselves in any way we can. I think that the idea was sort of tabled by the government last year. It's not really been implemented yet, that we would apply sort of legal sanctions on companies that are found to be using Uyghur forced labour and other forced labour in China. But we see this week it's been leaked that a government department has been using PPE or awarding PPE contracts to companies that have links to Uyghur forced labour. So the problem is that some of these things are obvious, it's how you do it, but there's just absolutely no will to do it within the government. And you actually see reports this week from Politico and The Independent that Boris Johnson himself personally is actually looking to pursue an actual trade deal with China. So I think you're totally right. We can't completely disentangle ourselves from China in the global economy. That's not going to happen. But we certainly shouldn't be seeking to be closer, and we should be forcing legal sanctions onto Western corporations in particular who are complicit in this. And, personally, it's not just about the government. It's please don't buy from places that are using people to work for them to make this cheap cloth or whatever, that are using forced labour, that are imprisoning people, because it's not acceptable.
Buy British, buy American, dare I say it, buy European. Well, look, let's get to our next story. A mother of three has sparked an online discussion after taking to parenting website Mumsnet, to which, I'll be honest, I'm addicted, seeking advice on friendship. Am I even allowed to read it? Who knew? She opened up online and explained her difficulty finding friends in her 40s. The lonely mum blamed moving areas frequently, not being able to sustain friendships and finding it stressful to make new connections with people. The post resonated with a lot of mums on the site. So is it hard to make new friends later in life? Ingrid.
Well, I like the way you look at me later in life.
You're about 30.
Yeah.
So you haven't got skin in the game yet. That bridge is yet to be crossed.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, God, I can't even see that bridge. It's so far away. I can't agree with her. I am very different to her. I'm very sociable. I've never had a problem making friends. I seem to be making. In fact, I don't want to make any more friends because I haven't got time for the ones that I've got.
Are we your friends?
Yeah, you're my friends.
Okay, good.
My two best friends.
Good.
NBS.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I don't have a problem with that at all. But looking at this woman's history, I feel really sorry for her in some ways. She said that she was the wrong colour in the wrong area. So she was, from a child, she was separated, so it was difficult for her to get involved. Then subsequently she moved, but she didn't just move like a little way away, she moved really a long way away, so she was completely separated from friends that she had made. So she's never had that continuity and that history that you build up with school friends or university friends or whatever, work friends. But unfortunately, she's really, the problem lies with her, that she's complaining about being lonely, but at the same time she's contradicting herself, so saying she can't be bothered to invest in the time for making friends. But maybe she's frightened because they'll be taken away from her again as before. But maybe she should just pursue something where she's with people, so she's not lonely. She could do an upholstery course. It's great fun.
Yeah.
They're not going to be bosom buddies.
But she'd have like fingers like a prize boxer, wouldn't she?
Yeah, she would. It would be terrible. And she wouldn't be able to wear nail
WWF or something. Oh, my goodness gracious. I mean, Albie, one challenge is that when people get into their 40s and 50s, a lot of social networks in that age group are already established. How do you enter them?
They are already established, but I didn't know that 42 was later life. I thought, 40 was the new 30 or something like that, so I'm not really sure that she's in later life. I do feel sorry for this woman up to a point, but personally, I and this might seem harsh, but I just don't know that she's got the right attitude. Some of the things that she's written on this post are, I don't want the hassle of making new friends, I can't be bothered. Making friendships and maintaining friendships requires effort. And if you're not willing to put that effort in, you can't be surprised when you don't have any friends.
Isn't that another factor, though, that people in their 30s, 40s and 50s are so busy trying to make a living, they haven't got time to invest in new friends?
But we all work the same hours in the week, don't we?
But didn't you find
3 children.
when you were at school, for example, or at college, you did have a bit more time, that recreation with which to hang out with people. But once you're in the rat race, there isn't really time, is there?
No, I disagree completely. When I speak to my mum, actually most of my mum's friends now she made at school in the playground. Those are all of her best friends she made in her 30s after she had me, and she's very sociable. But I think she's quite different to this lady.
But this lady couldn't because she moved. That was the thing.
But she also
moved too often.
Yes, but she also
and too far away.
She also said she had some friends that she was close with 5 years ago, and one of them said something like, "Oh, let's go out for a coffee," and she said the old her would have said, "Yes, let's do it." And she just went,
No, but hang on a minute. That's not that you've mixed two things. So
Have I?
Yes, I think so. She moved away, and she had friends from.
By the way, can I
before.
just tell you, it's like Jeremy Kyle. Let me tell you, she's behind the curtain.
Is she going to
I've
storm
got
on?
the bodyguards.
We've
as
got
well.
security here and everything. We've got producer Liam's going to have to drag him off, but, or her. But go on.
No, my understanding was that she did have really good friends before, and now she's moved again, and she's at some toddler group with her youngest. And a girl said to her, that's quite new, said, "Oh, you know, would you like to meet for a coffee?" And then it was like, So it's two different people, but from taking the past to the present, she's not going to start that up again, making friends and establishing friendships. Don't moan about it. I'm with you on that. You know, sort of got to be a little bit harsh.
Albie, what is the correct number of friends to have in your life?
"Can't you only know 150 people?"
Is that right?
Yeah, I think you can only your brain can only remember 150 people or something like that.
I wonder who's
but
been
I'm
pushed
sure I
out.
know more than 150
I think I've got a ways to go. But I mean, is there, you know, because certainly when I was at school, for example, I wasn't really into groups. I just had like 1 or 2 friends and we would hang out together and sort of pair up.
Quality, not quantity.
It wasn't. Well, that's the story of my life, Ingrid. Let me tell you, Valentine's is tomorrow. I'll be reminded of that brutal fact. But is there an optimum number of, for example, Albie, at this point in your life, do you think, right, that's it, I've got enough friends now?
No, I would never say that I had enough friends because I don't know who I'm going to meet. I've met lots of new people.
It could be like
on
a
GB
B&B.
News who I
No
would say
vacancies.
were my friends.
No vacancies.
I think you've always got to be open to
Amankona
new
Hotel
people in
is
your
full.
life and sort of be positive and take new opportunities and be polite and kind to people, and I'll be polite and kind to you back.
What do you think? Do you think, Georgia, that there is a set number of people you can manage to have in your life?
I think it depends because there are people who you have sort of different friendships with. You might not be as close with them, but maybe, you know, every few months you might meet up and you get along well. I think you can never say you have too many friends because, you know, you don't know who you're going to meet, who you're going to strike up a connection with. I think it's impossible to say. But the only thing I'm going to say about this woman is I think she needs a therapist.
Yeah, she probably does.
Sounds like she has a lot of
agree.
deep-set issues.
She might. I mean, if you were looking to make new friends, let's imagine you, for example, gregarious, popular person.
Hopefully.
But if let's say you moved somewhere else, you know, what particular methods would you deploy to make
I
new
don't know.
friends?
I have actually been in that position before. I've lived abroad twice, but I didn't really necessarily try and look for friends. It's just sort of happened when you're working or studying or you go to, I don't know, an event or something, you get talking to people. It's just something that happens naturally. I think this woman, she is putting herself in that position when she's going to playgroups, whatever, with the other mums, but then she's saying no to going for coffee with someone. So it's like, it's almost as if she wants to have her cake and eat it. She wants people to be at her disposal, to be friends with her, but she doesn't want it to be a two-way street. And I'm afraid if you want actual friendships, it requires effort.
Well, if you want ideas about finding friends, why don't you get on your knees and stuff a sofa or respring an armchair? It's worked for Ingrid. All of those things sounded filthy, and I'm sure.
I wasn't sure where you were going to go with that.
Sofa, I know that. Get on your knees and stuff a sofa. It doesn't sound good.
I tell you, the truth will out in relation to Ingrid's furniture repair. Look, lots more to come. Let's crack on with our final news agenda story in the company of my panel. With energy bills skyrocketing, mortgage rates soaring and a tax increase only weeks away, we're all having to make cutbacks. Well, the Daily Mail has partnered with 2 award-winning money journalists, Rachel Rickard-Strauss and Toby Waln, to collate 50 ways to manage the cost of living crisis. Their advice includes taking lunch to work, which apparently could save you £1,000 a year, cancelling subscriptions as well, but could you live without Netflix? Have you got any sort of financial life hacks at all, Georgia?
I would probably say I waste a lot of money, so no.
Bringing
Mostly on
bringing
food.
lunch to work is good, isn't it?
So I actually work from home right now, but definitely when I've been working in an office before, and I will be about to be again soon.
Yeah.
I think it depends because, sometimes you're waking up at 7 a.m., getting out the door, you don't want to have some mouldy old salad for your lunch. You want to enjoy yourself. So I think it depends. But one of the things I was thinking is I think in terms of the ethics of it and also saving money, buying clothes and shoes secondhand is definitely the way to go, I think.
Brilliant. And it's more fun, isn't it?
It is fun, yeah, because you're sort of rifling through, you don't know what you're going to find.
Going to basically
Yeah.
like a charity shop or a car boot sale, it's a treasure hunt.
Or even online, there's lots of places. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention certain.
Please, mention away.
Oh, am I allowed?
This is the home of free speech.
Oh, okay, excellent. I don't want it to get reported or something to Ofcom. Again, joke.
She said the O word. We're in trouble now.
Vinted is a really good app. You can
really?
buy...
Vinted?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So these shoes are actually vintage.
Oh, stop it. Listen, let's get a shot of those.
The shoes.
Adam, can you help us out here? We've got a very fast-moving team here. Oh,
These
they are
shoes- anyway,
gorgeous.
the red shoes.
They look like
They're
straight out
from
of...
the 70s, and they were only £10 on Vintage. So
They're
I
lovely.
feel bad for the person
Dorothy.
that sold them because maybe they didn't make enough money. But oh well.
Wizard of Oz. I
Yeah,
tell you.
exactly.
Who knows where those shoes will take you next?
Hopefully nowhere bad.
Down the yellow brick road.
Albie, are you parsimonious?
I don't know what that means, Mark.
Neither do I. I'm like Stephen Fry. I just throw these words around.
Just to sound clever.
Absolutely. You careful with money?
Am I careful with money? Yes, I would say that I was careful with money. I think that, there's nothing wrong with good old-fashioned things like, getting rail cards or turning the heating down or sewing up a hole in a piece of clothing instead of buying something new or buying something which is more expensive that lasts for a long time rather than all of this fast fashion stuff, a lot of it which comes from China, by the way.
Absolutely.
So I don't think any of this stuff is necessarily new. And what I find really funny in my generation is we sort of think we invent all of these things and it's kind of like, ooh, Vinted. It's just like going to a charity shop.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's nothing new. It's
right.
just good old-fashioned, living within your means.
Yeah, that's it. And that's what the country's got to do going forward, hasn't it? We've all got to tighten our belt, as have the government, Ingrid.
Absolutely. Living within your means is it is the key to everything. If you start overspending, you've just got to allocate and don't, for goodness sake, get into debt by overspending because these loan sharks and everything. Horrible, horrible, horrible. And don't gamble, don't go onto these things but thinking it's a way out because actually it'll get you deeper in debt. Anyway, if I was absolutely stony broke, I wouldn't get rid of my car because it's cheaper to do it that way, but I'd freewheel down hills. And I actually do turn my heating down and I turn it off earlier than I did before because my oil, I'm on oil, is twice...
So I've heard. Can I just say we're drug-free here at GB News? But listen, it's probably a legal high. But look, the clock's against us. But there you go. What a very sensible panel I've got. All I can suggest is I do wear an extra jumper at home rather than crank up the heating. And I do like keeping leftovers. I think that's a big thing. Yeah, and I think sometimes things like curries taste even better the next day.
They do.
Well, this conversation has inspired tonight's Great British Game Show because it relates actually to cheap and expensive things because fake designer goods are commonly sold online from a couple of quid to hundreds of pounds. But can you tell the difference? It's time for this. That's right, the Mail did a brilliant article today and they were looking at some items of clothing that cost 100 quid and others 27,000, jewellery as well. So we're going to play a game of rags or riches in which my panel and you at home must work out whether this item is a rag or a rich. Let's start with this item. It's a necklace. Is it a rag or a riches?
Rag.
Please tell me that's a rag.
It's cheap as chips. It is a rag. It is a necklace
I was worried.
from a bog-standard high street retailer. How about this next item? It's a pair of shoes. Rags or rich?
I think that could be rich.
Rich?
I mean, they have red bottoms. So
Yeah,
it might
they
be-
live
that
It
might
could
be
be fake, I don't
yes.
know.
That's right. They're Louboutins and they're 500 quid's worth of shoe, which I'm not wearing tonight, let me tell you. Wouldn't squeeze into those if I tried. How about this one? Rag or rich?
God, neither.
It looks vintage. Could be from Vinted. I think it's a rag.
Well, I'm afraid to say you've not got that posh eye because that is 600 quid's worth of floppy trouser. How about this one? Rag or rich?
Rag.
Fake.
I'm afraid it's the real deal. And
Set
you back
fakes are so
many
good.
thousands
So good.
of pounds they are. And Ingrid will be on eBay later.
Yeah, I will.
Buy it now. Thanks to my amazing